Good evening. Call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Education for August 25th, 2021. We are motioning to adjourn the public portion of the meeting and convene into executive session for the purposes of discussion of contracts. May I have a motion?
I motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned into executive session.
Predatory?
Good evening. We are going to reconvene into regular session. Calling back to order the August 25th, 2021 regular meeting of the Board of Education. Will everyone please rise for the pledge to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just one housekeeping note, Mr. Jamel Evans is unable to join us this evening, so he is not in attendance, and our student board representative, Omer Mosker, is enjoying his last bit of summer prior to senior year, and he will join us at our September meeting. Our mission statement: we are committed to academic achievement and success for all students in a safe environment. In partnership with families and our community, our mission is to promote confidence, inspire a passion for learning, and to prepare our students to become responsible global citizens. May I have a motion to approve the revised agenda?
I motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Questions and comments from interested citizens? We have a handful here this evening. I'd just like to remind everybody, I know that Ms. Vitucci sent the speakers an email this evening. We do have policy. Our policy is 30 minutes total, so we will hope to try to get to everybody, but I don't think that we will based on the number of speakers that we have. You are restricted to 3 minutes of speaking. I do ask that you be respectful of that so that we can move on to the next speaker. You will hear Ms. Vitucci with the dinging of a bell, and at that point, I do ask that you wrap up and excuse yourself so that we can move on to the next speaker. We will start this evening with Michael Egan, who is speaking on the 2021-2022 back-to-school plan regarding vaccination requirements. And I just should note that you can step over here to the podium, please. Oh, excuse me, it's over there to my left.
And they are going to spray in, and they're going to spray in between.
And yes, I'm sorry, we're back doing what we had done previous with COVID protocols. So when you're finished, Mr. Egan, prior to the next speaker coming up, just give us one moment because the custodial staff will go ahead and clean the podium. Thank you.
Okay. So am I on?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, my name is Michael Egan. I live in Monroe. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I will come in under my time limit easily. I want to speak about back-to-school policy and a common sense policy regarding vaccination. 100% of our children under 12 are unvaccinated. Very significant percentage, probably a majority, of our children who are 12 to 18 are unvaccinated. Allowing unvaccinated adults into a school district building will bring the virus into the building. It is exactly akin to bringing a fox into a henhouse. We don't have to do that. In fact, a solution, a common sense solution, is obvious, and in fact has become the policy of hundreds, if not thousands, of private industry companies, public institutions, and in fact, now the City of New York's Department of Education. The solution is to just prohibit unvaccinated adults from coming in the building. It's very simple. Importantly, the solution does not permit unvaccinated adults to come in if they test negative on some COVID test regimen. If you really think about that, it doesn't work, A, unless they get tested every day before they come in and get the result, which is not going to happen. But also, it really, if you really think about it, what it's doing is it's enabling and encouraging people to not get vaccinated, but don't want to get vaccinated. Why would we do that? So I cannot imagine an employee of the school district or any organization representing the employees of the school district who would not 100% wholeheartedly endorse that policy. Because I'm sure that in all cases, for all those people, their primary objective, their fundamental, most basic objective, is the safety of the children, as is the school board. And I hope you'll consider it and adopt it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take the time now to thank the high school for hosting us again and for the custodial staff for setting everything up and cleaning everything for us. It's good to be back at the high school where it's AC. So thank you for hosting us this evening. Our next speaker this evening is Eileen Collopy, who will be speaking on the mask mandate and children's health and social needs.
Good evening. I just want to start with something that I read last night. And honestly, I don't pick up my Bible enough, I don't open it enough, but I felt called to just open. And this is the page that I opened to, and this is what I read. If I speak without love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And I thought, what has been going on in our world? What's been going on in our schools? What's been going on in our lives is noise. Protests, hatred, mandates, control, fear. It's not from God. It's not from love. It's from evil. And I think we have to stand up for these kids. These kids aren't having a childhood. I heard love. I heard love in my street the other day because I have 3 new neighbors. They moved in, and within minutes, they were friends. They were playing. They were smiling. They weren't in masks. They are different religions, different cultures. Nobody cares. It's the way we grew up. You went to school, you got an education. Plain old reading, writing, and arithmetic. No agendas. You made friends. You were friends with the people who you got along with the best. No one looked at anyone's color. No one looked at anything. They were just friends. And these kids should come back in person, and they should get an education. A neutral one, but one without a mask. Because what's missing is the child's face. They need to see their friends. They can't read eyes. They can't read these social cues. We have a hard time as adults. I mean, you can't expect them to go in and be social and make friends when they can't see people. It's not right. And I investigated a little more on the masks because I need Elsie as our superintendent to speak up to the governor and say, Monroe-Woodbury parents want a choice. Some people might want their child in a mask. I don't. I looked at the research, and the contaminants in the mask are disgusting. I try to raise my kids healthy. I give them vitamins. I feed them good food. I try to do everything. And the filth that's in those masks, the bacteria, the parasites, the E. coli, the strep, it's disgusting. And then I thought, let me go back a little farther, before COVID existed, before the lies and the he said, she said stuff was on the internet. And prior to this, in the Journal of Orthopedics, they studied the mask of a surgeon, because he was the only one up until now that's been in a mask for 7 or 8 hours a day, and there was bacteria, back before COVID, and they recommended that the surgeon change his mask every 90 to 120 minutes, preferably 90. It wasn't mandated, it was recommended, but that was to protect that patient from the surgeon's germs in his mask, all the bacteria. I don't want my kid breathing that in. I want him to have friends. I want him to have an education. I don't want him in this mask and all these poor children. We need a choice, and like I said, there's probably parents that want it. We ask you to speak up on behalf and say, my child doesn't belong to New York State. Unfortunately, the truth is, they don't belong to you either. They belong to us, and we need to be able to speak up for our own children. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Cynthia Walsh, and she will be speaking on mask mandates.
Hi, my name is Cynthia Walsh. I'm a resident of the Monroe-Woodbury School District and a mother of 2. I'm here today to tell you why I'm opposing the mask mandates on children. There's many studies that show wearing a mask for long periods of time can cause negative effects. Some of the negative effects are shortness of breath, headaches, and negatively affect the work performance, feeling lightheaded. It lowers the oxygen levels on the blood. It can raise carbon dioxide levels to the blood. It weakens the immune system. It can cause development in chronic respiratory conditions. The use of cloth masks can increase the risk of getting other types of respiratory infections. Moisture is captured in the mask from sweat. Naturally, a person's mouth has bacteria that can be trapped in the mask, which then can travel to the mask and to the children's lungs. I don't want my children breathing that all day, acne and rash. I know you all say that you want to follow the science, so I also point out some facts. According to the CDC, kids between the ages of 0 and 18, during the flu season, there was 477 fatalities in 2018 for the flu in the US, 434 fatalities in 2019, and in 2020, 1. Now, let's go to COVID. According to the CDC, in 2020 till today, it has been 434 COVID fatalities for kids between the ages of 0 and 18. My question is, where did the flu go? According to the CDC, the survival rate for COVID for kids between the ages of 0 and 18 is 99.997%. The flu affects the kids worse than the COVID, yet we never had to put our kids through this. Do you think kids like wearing masks all day while they play indoors or outdoors or have to do gym class during music class? My daughter doesn't. She hates wearing a mask. It's very uncomfortable to her. She even has to wear a mask during her after-school activities when she has to go to dance. It's insanity. Obligating my child to wear a mask that she doesn't want to get an education is cruel and child abuse. Our jobs as parents is to make sure our kids are happy and safe. We know COVID doesn't affect the children as much, so we know they are safe. But now we have to work together so they can grow happy. Wearing a mask gives kids a sense of false security because even with a mask on, they can catch the cold, the flu, or other bacteria or germs. I am asking all of you to work with the parents and try to make this mandate optional. I should have the right to make the decision for my child. I am speaking on behalf of her today. The science shows that wearing a mask can be ineffective and it has negative impact for my children, whether it's physically, emotionally, or psychological. Here's an important thought as well. We go to a restaurant and we sit down with friends and family members and take out our mask. Why can't the kids do that when they are on their desk and they're learning? Maybe that could be an option. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Bernie Vega. She will be speaking about masks, and she is speaking on behalf of SEPTA.
No, she's not.
Oh, I'm sorry, it says here.
I know. Nope, that's incorrect.
Oh, okay.
She's
Sorry.
SEPTA, but she's not speaking on behalf of SEPTA.
I'm not speaking on behalf of anybody
Okay,
but myself.
got it,
sorry.
thank you,
Okay.
but just for yourself. Go ahead, thank you.
All right. Good evening, Board of Education and Cabinet. My name is Bernie Vega, and I'm a parent of 2 Monroe-Woodbury students. As a parent, when I seek to make decisions on their education path, I consult with various specialists in the field. When seeking medical advice, I seek experts in the medical profession as well. This evening, I will be reading an email from 2 Monroe-Woodbury proud graduates of the class of 2006. We are writing this letter to you as former students of the Monroe-Woodbury School District and current physicians who have been on the front line during the COVID-19 pandemic. While we all value civil liberties and freedom, the pandemic has posed grave and dire challenges that must be met with appropriate precautions. We have both seen the unfortunate reality of young patients passing away from COVID. An even larger number are still suffering with some of the long-lasting effects today. Still, their numbers are dwarfed by the number of middle and advanced age adults that have either passed away or been permanently disabled from COVID-19 infections. Throughout the entire pandemic, one thing has been clear. Masks work. They work to protect everyone, whether they be the kids in school or the parents and grandparents at home. Studies have shown that in schools that have remained open during the pandemic, those that participate in mitigation efforts like mask use have significantly low rates of outbreak. There is no disputing the healthcare resources are scarce. ICUs across the country are filling up. This not only possesses a risk for those severely ill with COVID, but also those patients severely ill with other conditions that require ICU level of care. Can you imagine going to the hospital with appendicitis and not being able to be admitted because the medical unit has been turned into a COVID ward? Or a parent requiring admission to the trauma ICU after a near fatal car accident that can't be admitted because we've lost so many healthcare workers that we don't have enough nurses to take care of them. This is a sad reality across much of the country. With the rise of the Delta variant and the coming school year, we risk having the same things happen again in New York State. We value individual liberties and freedom. We don't want people to live in fear. By definition, every pandemic has an end, and this one will be no different. Wearing a mask can help students and their loved ones at home safe until that ends. The school district has a responsibility to keep students safe. We are asking that you maintain your current plan to have students masked in school. Do it for the children, and do it for the healthcare workers across America who are now entering a third year of fighting this deadly virus. We are not invincible and have already lost so many. By Dr. Desmond Sutton, MD, Medical Director, Labor and Delivery, Assistant Professor of Obstetrics and Gynecology in Mount Sinai West Hospital, and Darian Sutton, Medical Analyst for ABC News and attending emergency medicine at Kaiser. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Casey Capon, supporting universal masking, and she is speaking on behalf of MWTA.
Good evening, Superintendent, Board of Education, and Cabinet members. My name is Casey Capon, and I'm the Executive Vice President of the Monroe-Woodbury Teachers Association. On behalf of the MWTA, I am here tonight to speak in support of universal indoor masking for students, faculty, and staff. Recognizing that there are strong opinions on both sides of the issue, we fully understand that there may be a strong disagreement with this position, and we respect those that have a difference of opinion on this issue. It is our hope that Monroe-Woodbury can be a model for how people can disagree, yet still come together for the common good. The members of the MWTA want nothing more than to have uninterrupted, in-person learning for our students 5 days a week. We believe that in-person learning is best for both students and teachers. We are very much looking forward to being with full classrooms of students just 1 week from today. It is for that reason we strongly support universal indoor masking. The American Academy of Pediatrics, CDC, and NICED have all concurred that this approach is the best way to maintain in-person learning, especially for those students who are not old enough to be vaccinated. The best defense for this virus, for those who are eligible, is to get vaccinated, and we urge those who are eligible to do so. In the absence of full vaccination, and in light of the more contagious Delta variant, universal masking is a critical component of the layered mitigation that is needed to mitigate the spread of COVID-19 in our schools. Fundamentally, we want our students, their families, and members of our community to be as safe as possible. Based upon the data, we believe that universal masking was effective in our buildings last year and should continue to be a part of our strategy to keep in-person learning in place. The last thing we want is to have large numbers of students and staff quarantined or long periods of remote instruction, as we are seeing in schools that have masks optional. We would like to thank the superintendent and the district for taking this necessary action that continues to prioritize in-person learning and the health and safety of everyone in the community during this difficult time. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ethan Strawinski. I apologize if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly. And he is speaking on eye-opening and critical race theory on behalf of himself.
Members of the Board of Education, the Cabinet, Superintendent Rodriguez, and members of the public. Some of you are already familiar with me, but for those of you who are not, I am Ethan Strawinski. I'm a Monroe-Woodbury graduate from the class of 2019, and truth be told, I did not see myself attending another one of these school board meetings. However, I feel compelled to address some of the remarks made by members of our community during the public comment at the previous meeting on July 28th. Particularly, I would like to address several of the comments made about critical race theory, eye-opening enterprises, and efforts to improve equity in our schools and in our community as a whole. I first want to state that I believe those who came to speak out on these topics at the prior meeting were making a well-intentioned effort to better the district, which I can commend. However, many of the comments made about critical race theory were extraordinarily misinformed and loaded with inflammatory rhetoric. As such, I believe this is a good opportunity to discuss what critical race theory is, and perhaps more importantly, what it is not. Critical race theory is an approach to studying American history with a focus on the intersection of the construct of race and American institutions. As you may tell from its definition, this is not a simple task, which requires those who are engaged in its practice to think critically about complex topics. I believe that students should be learning how to take nuanced information, process it, and come to defensible conclusions based on that information. This is not just a history class skill, but a life skill. Several of the speakers at the previous meeting voiced concerns that critical race theory would only teach children to hate each other and to hate themselves. This is simply not true. One of the core principles of critical race theory as a method is to take individuals out of racism and examine how racism is built into American institutions and government. Policies of slavery, Jim Crow, and housing discrimination were not the results of individuals and their actions, and especially not the result of the children and teens in our schools. These practices were enacted by institutions, and the motivating factors are more complicated than just a few villains from history. Many distinct social and economic factors contributed to the historically racist practices of American institutions. One of the overarching goals of critical race theory is to try and figure out what those factors may have been in the past, and hopefully to prevent those factors from creating an environment that fosters racism in American institutions going forward. The alternative approach, which some speakers at the prior meeting advocated for, is a colorblind education which preaches American exceptionalism and fails to confront the complex history of race and American institutions. A colorblind teaching of history ignores the historical impact that the construct of race has had and continues to have on American society. One example of this difference in the classroom can be seen in the teaching of the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution. I'm going to keep going. Those documents were inspired by Enlightenment principles of liberty and equality and secured for all Americans their quote-unquote God-given rights, as one speaker at the prior meeting put it. I'm going to keep going.
Ethan, I'm sorry, but I'm going to stop you for the sake of time because we do have several other speakers. But as I've stated in previous meetings, if you do have anything else that you'd wish for us to hear, our email addresses are posted on the district website, and you are more than welcome to go ahead and send us an email with the rest of your thoughts, including the documents that you have.
I will be doing that. Okay. I would like to just state on the record, so that it is on the record, that you have let people spew misinformation at prior meetings well beyond their deadline.
Well, we're working on getting that under control and keeping to the 3-minute time, so I appreciate you honoring that. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Lorraine Loning. She will be speaking on eye-opening and systemic racism, and she is speaking on behalf of herself.
Hello, my name is Lorraine Loning, and I am a district resident. There's a lot to unpack from the July 28th public comment portion of the Board of Ed meeting, but tonight I want to specifically respond to a speaker who asked the board to tell one example of systemic racism in the district. Spoken like someone who has no idea what systemic racism is. Systemic racism is not an individual event. It is not something that is done by an individual or perhaps not even a district. It's bigger than that. It is something that is baked into the cake and just cooks in the background. And it is also ubiquitous. It is so ubiquitous that you might not even know it is happening unless you are experiencing it or looking for it. Let's do a little exercise. Ask your child, ask yourself, what grade were you in when your first teacher was a person of color? Do you have that answer? Now ask your children and ask yourself, out of all your teachers in your school career, what percentage of teachers were people of color? If you're like me or my kids, those numbers are alarmingly small. And because of that, we missed out on having a richer education. Research suggests that having educators of color as professional role models in schools benefits all children, all students, and society in several ways, including reducing the likelihood that any student will grow up to harbor implicit bias against individuals from other racial backgrounds. Using the Freedom of Information Act, I requested data that this district reports to the state ed detailing the race of staff members. Mr. Kravitz, the Assistant Superintendent of HR, was nice enough to reach out to me and let me know that current data wouldn't be available for another few weeks, and I agreed to wait for that data rather than getting old information. But since I don't have current information specific to this district, I'll use state data and figure that this district is not too dissimilar from other suburban districts in the state. According to the New York State Education Department Educator Diversity Report from December 2019, New York State's student population has become increasingly diverse, with the population of students of color topping 50%, while the racial and ethnic composition of the teacher workforce has remained constant. Only 20% of teachers statewide are people of color. I look forward to receiving that data from Mr. Kravitz that I requested regarding the race of teachers. But based on a quick survey of my Monroe-Woodbury kids and their friends, I think 20% teachers of colors might be an optimistic number. This low number of people of color in teaching is self-perpetuating. Representation matters. When a child sees someone who looks like them doing important jobs, it means that career is attainable. If you are a little boy or a little girl and you do not see any teachers that look like you, these careers can seem unattainable and not an available option to you. That means fewer students of color going into education, fewer students of color graduating with degrees in education, and ultimately fewer people of color getting hired, a terrible cycle. So to the speaker from the last meeting, that is how systemic racism works. Not one instance in time when a racist act takes place.
Ms. Loning, thank you, but the
a
time has
persistence of a
expired.
norm that some might even recognize as racism.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Janet Stelz. She will be speaking on Monroe-Woodbury culture, curriculum, and eye-opening enterprises.
Brought my timer too, so I don't go over. All right. Thank you very much. So overall, the main topic, obviously, is critical race theory or critical theory, having to do with all three topics you just read off. A slight shift here in the fact that, one, just a quick comment I heard earlier about the history of critical race theory really is rooted in critical theory, which originates from a man named Herbert Marcuse, who was a German communist back in the 1930s. Critical theory is basically and it's an ideological master key like a locksmith would have. And it allows to penetrate into any system. You could put critical race, critical gender, critical political theory, you could put anything in the middle of it. The point is division, dividing people into group after group after group and keep dividing people so they pitted against each other, opposing one group against the other, and that makes things almost impossible to unify and heal. Just want to put that out there. As far as it being a history, the author of the 1619 Project, which is the peanut butter to the jelly of CRT, Nicole Hannah-Jones-Smith, herself said, "This is not a history," and I quote her from her own Twitter feed, 1619 Project is not a history. And again, this goes hand in hand with critical race theory. They're one and the same. They are preaching the same thing here. It is a work of journalism that explicitly seeks to challenge the national narrative and therefore the national memory. The project has always been as much about the present as it is about the past. Okay, so let's talk about all of history. There's a great misconception out there where people think that more conservative-minded people are not interested in talking about slavery in the classroom or teaching the full history of the U.S. That could not be further from the truth. We do want the fullness of history taught, the whole picture, not just cherry-picked things that vilify white people, or especially, white males, or we're oppressors, the other kids are oppressed. It's the constant labeling that leads to this constant division within our children, within our workplaces, and within our country. So leading things down, you have a vocabulary. You hear the same words you hear all the time. You hear critical race theory or culturally responsive training, anything that has to do with teaching people that you're different, you're oppressed, you're an oppressor. You have white privilege. Look at the color of your skin. Kids were never so obsessed with the color of their skin until this all started to reemerge. Okay? Teaching good character, teaching love, and acceptance based on, again, we've all heard, thank you, Martin Luther King said it best, and I'm sorry if it's being said too much, but the content of one's character, okay? Colorblindness is not a problem. That's the solution that is now being dismantled by conjuring up this problem again so that it doesn't get healed. It's a way to keep people divided. Let's talk about those differences, let's talk about them, but then move toward a solution, okay? We don't want to... Okay. Okay, last sentence is, as I leave, is that there will be an open forum. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Sorry about that. Okay. We will be doing an open forum to have an open conversation with everybody, and we would like to have this conversation with both sides so that we can finally start communicating with each other and stop hating on each other. Thank you.
Thank you. One more. Our last speaker of the evening will be Crystal Bradley. She will be speaking on eye-opening enterprises. She's speaking on behalf of herself.
Good evening. Thank you. Thank you to the board and to the community. I'm a mother of 2 children in the Monroe-Woodbury School District, and I won't get into it because of time, but we've had a wonderful experience thus far, and we are so grateful to all of the staff and the community that's made it such a great learning experience. The reason I wanted to share tonight is in response to the July school board meeting, eye-opening enterprises, and concern expressed about critical race theory. I want to share that I am in support of the efforts the district is making with eye-opening enterprises. It appears to me that the purpose of the program is to both support the mental health and overall health of teachers, staff, and students, and to help both really see and hear and validate each other. And I think that this includes discussing and valuing culture, race, ethnicity, gender identity, ability, class, and all the other isms. It also seeks to consider the effect of trauma and to teach resilience and stress management. I know that Dr. Pickens is here tonight with us and will be presenting, so I don't want to, speak for him. But there's been a lot of talk about conflating his program with critical race theory as far as what I can see. And I couldn't see anywhere that I looked as far as the website, introduction in the school board, that his program is explicitly critical race theory program. However, if we're using that term to generalize as a blanket term, teaching any American history, society, institutions from a race-based perspective, then I believe our children should be taught this. I'm not an expert. I'm coming from a place of someone that's also continuing my journey of learning and growing, and that is my intention. But I want my children to be provided with an honest, multicultural, and not whitewashed version of American history. And this includes exploring and critiquing systems of racism, white supremacy, oppression, and inequality. And it also, I believe, should include the efforts that have been made and are currently happening as far as current movements to teach us about improving this and to work to improve our society. I believe that integrating this into our children's education will help our kids to better be equipped to have these conversations moving forward. They are our hope for a better, more just, equal, inclusive future for our society. I think we should trust that our teachers and our children can navigate these conversations in a way that will not create division, but rather potentially create an increased sense of inclusion, safety, healing, and a reduction in the harm that can often be done, often unintentionally, but still can be done, based on a lack of understanding and truly seeing the humanity in another. And they're going to make mistakes. We're going to make mistakes. It's difficult, it's challenging, but I think that when you make mistakes in trying to grapple with all of these issues that are happening and that have happened for centuries, that we'll learn and grow. I think that that's my time. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, but we have policy that we stick to the 30 minutes. We can look to... We can take a vote.
Ask for a motion. What? Ask for a motion. Ask for a motion.
Can I have a motion to allow for one more speaker?
Motion. Second.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The last speaker of the evening is Samantha Robertson, who will be speaking on behalf of education, and she's speaking on behalf of herself.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Glenn Robertson. This is my wife, Samantha. We've lived here for 9 years, and we have 4 children in our school district. Over the last few months, we've developed several concerns regarding what's being taught in the classrooms here. As an educator myself, I am concerned about our children and what they're being exposed to in the classroom and whether they are being educated or indoctrinated. And as you can see by the evidence of the testimony tonight, there are definitely issues that are going on that seem to be outside the purview of education in the traditional regard to reading, writing, science, social studies. And we have a few questions. Just back to the basics. I'm a mom. I just want some simple answers to just clarify and make sure we're on the same page here. I'd like the answers to be provided in clear, unambiguous language. What is the board's definition of education? What is the board's definition of indoctrination? Does the entire board support these 2 definitions? What is the school district's policy regarding indoctrination in the classroom? And I'd like to know what are the names and descriptions of the mandatory training Monroe-Woodbury teachers have received in the last 5 years. It is our hope that these answers will clarify to us that you remain a board of education and not a board of indoctrination. Thank you.
Thank you. We have updates on questions and comments from our previous meeting by Mrs. Rodriguez.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm sorry, I didn't hear what he said. Okay. It says, good evening. As is the district's practice, when anyone raises a question to the Board of Ed or the superintendent, we will respond accordingly at our next meeting. First, I want to let you know that the school district values the opinions and insights of all their stakeholder groups. Underlying important work we do are the connections and eventual discussions that come when people feel comfortable sharing. At the July 28th board meeting, several community members expressed their concerns about curriculum and the work that we are doing with eye-opening enterprises. Board of Education meetings are not conducive to these types of discussions. This conversation deserves a more thoughtful approach where all parties can engage in a genuine dialogue. I will be reaching out to representatives to schedule a meeting, a forum, to give this the time that it deserves. On July 28, we had a total of 7 speakers. There were several questions that had to do with critical race theory. CRT is an academic concept that is more than 40 years old. It emerged out of a framework for legal analysis in the late 70s and 80s. Critical race theory is not synonymous with eye-opening enterprise bridge ticker program, which stands for Building Trauma-Informed and Culturally Responsive Connections in the Classroom. This is not a curriculum. It is professional development for our staff. Dr. Hassler will speak about the district's book selection and the process for curriculum later on. We will have Dr. Pickens present on the program, its mission, and the work he is doing with the teachers and staff. I would like to share some background regarding student programs such as OVEUS and Safe School Ambassadors that we have implemented over the past 17 years and the impact that these programs have had on our students. These programs never stated that they would eradicate bullying. However, their goal was to reduce existing bullying problems among students, help prevent the development of new bullying problems, and achieve better peer relations at school. Safe School Ambassadors started in the early 2000s in grades 6 through 12. It is a program for students that focuses on improving school climate and safety by changing social norms. This program selects socially influential students from diverse backgrounds. They are equipped and empowered to safely intervene when they witness bullying, cyberbullying, or other forms of mistreatment or harmful behaviors. Both programs have helped to shape a culture in school where our students are willing to report more bullying and harassment behaviors and not remain as bystanders. It gives students the tools on how to handle conflicts with their peers. These students have taken a proactive approach in building relationships and have helped diffuse potentially volatile situations within our middle school and high school. The cost associated with Safe School Ambassadors is approximately $4,000 for training of 60 students. Additionally, both the middle school and the high school have a Safe School Ambassador advisor, and that is a yearly stipend of anywhere between $2,000 and $6,000 for each advisor. Our latest program for students in grades pre-K through 5, which we implemented in 2018, Choose Love, was founded by Scarlett Lewis. She began the Choose Love movement after her son, Jesse, was murdered during the Sandy Hook Elementary School tragedy in December of 2012. Choosing love means choosing to live a life with courage and gratitude, practicing forgiveness and being compassionate. This curriculum includes a multicultural literature component that teaches diversity, social justice, and inclusion. Through literature, students learn to appreciate their own cultures as well as those of others. Engaging in children's literature provides them opportunities to gain perspectives and develop empathy, increase social-emotional development, establish a growth mindset, and foster creativities. These lessons for students are designed for teachers, and this program is free. The Bridge Ticker program was introduced to our staff in 2020. It was vetted by members of the reopening committee who strongly believed we needed to respond to these challenging times and provide a social-emotional component to the reopening plan. The objective of our partnership is to provide support and coping mechanisms through a series of events and workshops with a focus on resilience. The cost of the partnership with Eye Opening for the 2020-21 school year was $198,000, and we had a COSER with BOCES that reduces the cost of these types of professional development programs. For example, we will receive approximately $78,000 for the cost of the Bridge Ticker program. Programs are chosen through a committee that include various stakeholders. Programs are evaluated for their appropriateness and their alignment with the district's mission. The district mission is everybody's mission. I firmly believe that we all want the same thing for our children. It's just a matter of developing a respectful dialogue where everyone's perspectives are heard and valued. Thank you. I'm now going to turn it over to Dr. Hassler.
Mrs. Rodriguez had asked that I speak regarding curriculum selection and the creation of curriculum within the school district. We follow the New York State Education Learning Standards for each course in each content area as a framework for the curriculum that we develop within the school district. This is due in part to many of our classes and courses culminate in some form of standardized assessment that our students are required to participate in. Even if there is no standardized assessment, Content areas such as music, visual arts, family and consumer science also follow the New York State learning standards. Regarding textbook selection, a committee is developed to gather various options for textbooks that are going to be considered. These options are reviewed by the team, and in some cases, if there is a large-scale implementation for the textbook, we pilot some of those materials. Once a final selection is made, that recommendation then goes to administration in the form of a proposal which includes how that textbook aligns with the New York State learning standards, what other books were reviewed in the process, and how that textbook will be used. It also explores various other resources, including online and digital accessibility of those materials. Once that process is complete, the administration then makes a recommendation to the Board of Education. Regarding the literature selection, which is different than textbook, we use the American Library Association school library selection criteria for literature choices, and this includes both books for circulation within our school libraries as well as materials that are used within our classrooms. They outline the general criteria as well as review resources for literature. We most commonly use their recommendation of the school library journal to review any literature that we select. If you're questioning any material, such as a piece of literature, I recommend that you start by looking at the American Library Association selection criteria and using their review sources that they provide. Other questions regarding literature or any issues regarding instructional material can certainly be directed to either myself or any building administrator, and we will review it further. Regarding the review of curriculum overall, I did a presentation to the Board of Education and the community on October 14, 2020, last year, because of some summer curriculum work that we conducted during the summer of 2020. In that presentation, I referred to the Cultural Responsive Sustaining Framework published by the State Education Department in the fall of 2019. The document outlines 4 overarching areas for districts to focus on in becoming more culturally responsive. And the 4 areas are to create a welcoming and affirming environment, to establish high expectations and rigorous instruction, to develop inclusive curriculum and assessments, and finally, to promote ongoing professional learning and support. I absolutely encourage everyone to please review this document as it outlines the rationale that's being given to the school district from the State Education Department, as well as it outlines the rationale behind much of the work that the district is participating in. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, we are pleased to have Dr. Pickens in the audience this evening. So he will be giving us a presentation on the overview of the Bridge Ticker program and eye-opening enterprises. Welcome, Dr. Pickens.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's so good to see all of you all here. And I was originally slated to come here tomorrow to do some professional development. And Superintendent Rodriguez and the team said, there's a board meeting. I said, I have to be here. I have to get to meet everyone in person. So it's so great to meet you, so great to meet everyone in the audience. One of the things I realized very quickly working with Monroe-Woodbury is that we had something in common, and that was passion. Passion for what it is that we do and wanting to see our kids, and not only our kids succeed, but also wanting to see the colleagues that we work with, the families that are in our communities, be their best self. And so I am excited to be here today to talk to you a little bit more about the Bridge Trauma-Informed Culturally Responsive Program. I know there's been a lot of passionate debate around it, but I'm here to both give you a sense of what this program is about, but also to really help you understand what the heart of what we're trying to do together with Monroe-Woodbury and our team. And that's really to create a compassionate school climate. When we talk about a compassionate school climate, what we're talking about is a school climate where the humanity, the whole student, is seen in everything that we do in terms of our work with the students in building the relationships, but also supporting the staff to have the social emotional skills to be able to not only support the students that they easily connect with, but also support the students who they may not have familiar backgrounds with. They may not have an understanding of who they are and where they come from, but they know that they can connect with them and help them reach their potential both academically and socially and emotionally. One of the things that I really want to preface everything I'm saying with is that we started at a very tough time. Two words come to mind for me at the moment that we started. The words of hope and pain. Pain and hope. We started in the middle of a pandemic when so many of us were experiencing such deep pain, not knowing how we could connect with people around us and not knowing even if we were going to be able to see people in person. But part of what I loved about connecting with Monroe-Woodbury right from the outset is that they saw beyond you all, and collectively we saw beyond the pain to the hope. The hope of our ability to connect with each other, to heal from the pain of the trauma that we've collectively experienced throughout this past year, 2 years, the pain of wanting to see our kids have happy and fulfilling lives, even though we may disagree on certain aspects of how to get there. And the hope of us being able to come together and have conversations that are tough, but respect each other. And feel that we have the ability to be able to have honest and authentic connections with each other. And so with that preamble, I'll get to the heart of what we're talking about here because I don't want to take up too much time. But I want to highlight this compassionate school climate that we're looking to develop. Part of it is by being able to recognize the pain that our students have experienced in the past, whatever pain it may be, but also understand the hope of the potential of who they can be. And that's what brings us here to this Bridge Trauma-Informed Culturally Responsive program. To give you a little context about myself, I'm the former assistant director of a national trauma program at UCLA and Duke. And so I've done work around the country for over a decade and a half focusing on how does trauma-informed practices support students to really heal from things ranging from abuse and neglect to experiencing war in another country to coming to our own homes and experiencing the loss of a father or a grandfather. How do you deal with that pain that you've experienced outside the classroom and still feel like you can connect and you can still grow academically and social emotionally? And so with that experience, I really felt passionate that we needed a program that not only addressed that pain, but also allow students to express pain about not feeling that their pain has been seen for whatever reason, whether it's because they haven't had the words to express it or because other people have so much pain or experiences in their life that make it difficult for them to connect in a way that supports that healing. And so what this program really focuses on is two main foundations that are part of this program. And I'm going to share some additions that we actually added based on our conversation with the leadership team right at the outset of our work together. So the foundations of this program are 4 modules. And these modules are about 16 hours of content, half of which has already been provided to the staff in the first year of our work together, modules 1 and 2. The first module focuses on trauma-informed practice. What is trauma? What are traumatic stress reactions? These are some of the same symptoms we see with PTSD, that when soldiers go to war or when people lose someone close to them. This is also dealing with the stress of just growing up in a world where you do feel the pressures of what's going on around you and the anxiety of having to achieve and all of these different aspects. What we're trying to do is what we want to give teachers are the tools to feel like they can connect with students even when students feel anxious and help them get through that moment and help them continue to achieve academically and help them reach their goals. And so that first module really focuses on that. The second module is our culturally responsive module. And just for clarity's sake, cultural responsive practices is not a critical race theory. What we do in culturally responsive practices is we really help our teachers understand the whole student, but even beyond that, we help our teachers understand their whole selves. And we all bring our life experiences into the classroom, right? As soon as your students see you, as soon as you all see me, you know things about me, right? You see a wedding ring, I'm married, right? You see how tall I am. You know, this is the first time we're meeting. I told some people I was 6'7" on the Zoom, so sorry to disappoint you. But all the things about who I am, they're things that you just see, and we all have a way of making decisions around on that. And I'll give you a little personal example real quick around why this is so important for us to be aware of. I used to live in New York City, and if you ever have been on a New York City bus, there's one question you have to ask yourself as soon as you get on the bus. What is that smell, right? And you're on the bus, and you're looking, and you don't look at every single person. You make a quick decision about where you sit. And part of what we have to do in our everyday life is we take in so much information. We have to make important decisions that not only affect us, but affect others' lives. And part of this work is being able to understand how do we make decisions to support our kids as much and as fully as we possibly can. And so this gives teachers, and it gives administrators, and it gives school staff the skills to recognize, how can I support that healing and hope? How can I recognize that pain so that these students can be best positioned to be the best possible version of themselves into the future? Now, here's the thing we know about training. Training alone does not support change. Training is great. It's amazing. It helps people learn new things, but it doesn't support change by itself, because you need support with implementation. And so one of the things that we have done, and I'll share what the other two modules are in a second, but I want to really speak on these implementation meetings. So we meet monthly with a representative group of teachers, administrators, parents, students in the case of middle school and high school, who really come to the table asking, how do we take these concepts that we're passionate about, and how do we really engage this in our school building in a meaningful way? One of the first things I shared with the implementation teams, and they can attest to this, is I said, we need people at the table of this implementation team that have different perspectives. I need the people who don't agree with things that you agree with. I need people who do agree with what you agree with, because part of this journey is for us to be able to create spaces where we can actually have conversations, where we can actually talk with one another in meaningful ways. And so I was so happy that so many of the implementation team members embraced this. And actually, in our first couple of meetings, we had them go look for folks to bring into the meeting who may have different perspectives. So really being able to have that opportunity to do some really important work. I'll share what that work is in a moment on the next slide, but to let you know what the rest of the modules are. Module 3 and Module 4 are what we're doing this year. And Module 3 is about how do we bring these concepts around trauma-informed practice and understanding the whole student and understanding ourselves holistically into creating a classroom environment that uses the best practices for motivating students to be in class and to remain engaged with the work that they do. As we all know, with the pandemic and with remote learning, there's been so much disengagement among our students. And part of what we really have to do is we have to really take the time and energy to be able to re-engage our students in meaningful ways so they can feel connected with each other, with the work, and with everything that they're doing. The fourth module is a module that I'm always excited about, because it's about the staff. It's about staff wellness. We know that we can't pour from an empty cup. We have to be refueled and refilled ourselves. And so a big part of this program isn't just about trauma-informed practices for students. It's about helping us, our staff, and even our community as a whole be able to get the type of skills to manage the stress that comes with our current environment where we're at, but also be able to recognize what inspires us, what motivates us, and how do we bring that into the school building. And so these are the foundations of this program. But like I told you, Monroe-Woodbury, you all are trailblazers, so you all say that wasn't enough. There is an important aspect that we wanted to build on so that this is really sustained, and I really appreciated that. And so what we did in this first year, I think, was really great. I did my best to honor the mascot, so hopefully that looks good up there to everyone in the back. So here's what we did. Here's what we did in the first year. The implementation teams. The first thing that we did is we knew that so many students felt disconnected because they were in remote environments. And so we developed something called connection sessions. These connection sessions were unstructured spaces where students could actually generate questions and ask each other those questions. One of the things that we saw pretty early on is that students felt like they were coming into these Google Meet spaces for just doing the work. And they didn't have that those intangible moments you have when you're in recess and you're able to ask questions. And particularly for our elementary school students, this was was an opportunity for them to actually generate questions and then have other people ask them. You can't imagine the power a 7-year-old feels when they create a question and then people actually have to answer it. And so it was a moment for us to really take a lot of these concepts around how do we create connectedness despite a potentially traumatic event with the pandemic happening around us and still create a connected classroom where students felt heard and seen. And so there were a number of different ways elementary schools engage this. The implementation team usually tries to pilot some of these and then bring it to the wider school so that we can get feedback from everyone along the way. The second area that we really focused on are these brave conversations. Part of what our philosophy in our work is relationships first. We believe in building healthy and strong relationships. And so our idea of brave conversations about anything is, how can we have this conversation that's honest and authentic while preserving the relationship? And so we started some of these conversations within the implementation team. The high school they were the brave trailblazers and actually had a town hall with their staff around some of the equity issues and some of the data around those equity issues. And it really created a really nice momentum to get us started to think about how do we continue to build on this with really trust of each other as a whole going into year 2. And then the third area I want to highlight that some of the schools engaged was this wellness buddy program for their staff. During this past year, so many staff felt the stress and the strain of the pandemic. And they felt the stress and strain of remote learning. And part of what we know is that there's not just one way to handle stress. There's lots of different ways, but one of the best ways to handle stress is by connecting with people that you trust and being able to have some focused skills around being able to manage that stress. We supported that throughout this past year with some of the schools, and we're hoping to build that out even further in the second year. And so that was the implementation team activities. What do we do district-wide? Well, one of the things that we really felt, especially since there's so much passion around these issues of equity, is that we needed a district-wide equity task force. And so we brought together over 20 to 30 folks from both community and each of the schools. Each school's implementation team sent a representative to this district-wide task force where we started to talk about the mission of Monroe-Woodbury and how do we make sure that all students feel and connected to that mission and can actually build on that mission to both achieve their academic goals, but achieve their life and social emotional goals as well. In addition to that, some of you, hopefully if you didn't have the chance, they should still be up, had a chance to see some of the parent workshops where we gave more information around what trauma-informed is. And then I got to do, I like to think, a little bit more fun one during the holidays where we got to watch a clip from a little Disney Pixar movie and talk Inside Out, if you don't know, great movie. But being able to have this opportunity to really give parents skills or at least insight into what we're doing with these trainings. And just to be clear, the program is for the staff, and the staff take this and we work together to see how does this best support the students long term. Now, we had 2 times that we were able to connect with students during this year. The first time was a student assembly for the high school that gave an opportunity for students to really deal with holiday stress. A lot of students were stressed out around the time of the holidays, and so we gave them stress reduction skills and really supported that while also thinking about what helps them feel refueled and recharged. And then we also had the opportunity to talk to the athletes of the middle school and the high school, which was such a great opportunity. I'm a former athlete myself. I played college basketball at GW. That's probably why I say I'm 6'7" when I'm only 6'1". But it was a great opportunity to be able to connect with the student athletes and bring some of these concepts around stress reduction and managing your well-being into a real-world place, because a lot of them were really frustrated that they didn't get a chance to have their senior year, and they were waiting for colleges to scout them because of COVID. And there was a lot of anxiety, and so we were able to be there and support them in that. And so those are some of the main highlights from year 1. Year 2, we're going into year 2 with some great momentum. I already spoke about modules 3 and 4 that we're going to be building on. And then we're also going to be doing some booster sessions. These booster sessions are really intended for our team to work with the implementation implementation teams so that we can actually have the implementation team, the folks who are in the school, to be able to continue to build on some of these concepts like connection sessions and brave conversations and wellness buddies, all of these really what staff have shared at different points, tools that have helped them help students stay more focused and more connected to their schoolwork and more connected to themselves in meaningful ways. And then the other piece that we're going to continue to build on is the Equity Task Force. We really want to continue to grow the work that the Equity Task Force is doing. We're hoping in this upcoming year that we can really model after the high school in many ways and do a town hall so that, again, we want a very transparent process that allows folks to be engaged and be connected. And if you have a different perspective, we welcome it. The heart of what we're looking to do with you all together in this partnership is really for all of us to see each other's humanity. That's what a compassionate school culture is. And when we bring different voices to the table to hear that humanity, we stop seeing just issues. We stop seeing problems. We see people. And seeing people allows you to make productive progress towards the kind of school and the kind of culture and really the kind of relationships that we all want to have. So with that, I thank you for your time. And if there's any, I'm not sure, school board, if there's anything I need to share.
Yes, no, absolutely. If there's any questions that anybody has?
No.
I'll just say that, I guess part of it is based off of a question, but, when this was brought to us last year during the start of the pandemic, and I was one of the ones that sat on the reopening plan, it was a concern. And I have to say that, under normal circumstances, as board members, we don't necessarily sit in on some of these programs, but because we knew that there was going to be an expense to it, and it was a long-term proposition that we'd be working with you for the next 2 years, we were invited to go ahead and do that. I do know that you spoke with us, albeit virtually, at our board retreat last year, so we appreciate that. But I will say that I have been able to hop into some of these Google Meets. Everything has been virtual, so I was able to attend a few. And really all I can take away from it was really moving, based off of stuff that was said by staff, parents, students, and it certainly was not what I expected. So I know for myself personally, I'm appreciative of it. I look forward to the work that's going to continue this year with our students. And I think part of the question that I had was, because you didn't touch upon it, and I wanted to make certain that it was known to the public, is that we are collecting data, and there is feedback that has been given already from this year from both students and from staff. And I don't know if there's anything that you can speak to that, because I know that it has been raised here at our previous meeting as well.
Yeah, it's a great question. So we did a couple of different surveys with the staff around attitudes and knowledge around trauma-informed and culturally responsive practices, that we are still pulling that data together and actually going to provide a report to you all in the next few weeks or so around that, so you can and share with everyone to be able to see what has been done. In addition to that, each implementation team identifies what are the metrics that are important for their school to track over time. So is it less, you want to see less suspensions, or you want to see greater attendance? And so we try to pair it with what we think, but also this is a very collaborative process. And so we work with each school to see what is the data that's most important that they track over time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any feedback or questions? Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Pickens.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have a presentation of the 2021-2022 back-to-school plan by Mrs. Rodriguez and Dr. Hassler.
I just need a clicker.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I could have gotten up. I need the exercise. Just give us a couple of minutes. She has to get the presentation up, right? Do you want to take like a 2-minute break or 5-minute break?
We'll take a quick 5-minute break while we get the presentation and everything rolling.
Good.
Okay, we are back in session. There was no board business discussed during the short break. I will just make mention that unfortunately Dr. Koifman had an emergency and did have to leave us, so he is no longer here. So we're going to go ahead and move on with our presentation from Mrs. Rodriguez and Dr. Hassler on the back-to-school plan for 2021-2022.
Good afternoon, Board of Education. back-to-school plan for the 2021-2022 school year. Our goal this year is all students in person 5 days a week, with some priorities. And I always talk about the priorities on, I've had this from last year, our reopening priorities. It's maintaining the safety and well-being of students and staff, ongoing social emotional support for students, staffs, and family. As you've heard and as we've read, these have been some really trying time for our children, our families, and many of our students and families have been exposed to trauma by way of the pandemic. So it's very important for us to focus on that. And the last, but not the least, but the most important is we're going to have a continuous, robust instruction. Let me go back. How do we make decisions? First and foremost, we consult with our district physician to review New York State of Ed health guidance and how it specifically relates to Monroe-Woodbury. We met with members of the reopening committee consisting of parents, teachers, and administrators, medical professions, and gained insight. And then we have, of course, ongoing communication with the Orange County Health Department. Recent health guidance. Yesterday, we heard the Governor Hochul, which I had said she would do. She has directed the Department of Health to institute universal masking for anyone entering our schools. The New York State Education Department, the CDC, and the AAP strongly urge that students, staff, visitors to school buildings wear masks while inside school buildings, regardless of the vaccination status. One different component that we had from last year is that masks are no longer required for students and staff once they're outside. Close contact. So that was a big conversation because last year, close contact was defined by the Orange County Health Department. And by the way, this presentation will be on our website, so if anybody wants to see it, it'll be on the website and you can download it. Close contact, according to the CDC, is through the proximity and duration of exposure, so someone who's within 6 feet of an infected person for a cumulative total of 15 minutes or more over a 24-hour period must be quarantined. Here is a big exception, and I think it's really important for us to note. In K-12 indoor classroom settings, the close contact definition excludes students who are within 3 to 6 feet of an infected student or a clinically compatible illness if both the infected student and the exposed student are wearing a mask. That is really important for us, and that was part of the driving factor for us as a school district, because again, the goal is to maintain our students in school 5 days a week. So students, one really important piece is any student who is vaccinated will not be required to quarantine. So if a student is in school and they're wearing a mask and the other student is wearing a mask, and that's an infected student, according to the CDC, that student does not need to quarantine unless they begin and they don't feel well, then they recommend that you get tested. But other than that, you just continue to wear a mask. And I'm going to talk a little bit about, because I was talking about quarantining, and now we're going to talk about, so what happens if a student gets quarantined? And I should say that the expectation on the district's part, according to the new rules, is that if we are all wearing a mask and some students may be vaccinated at the secondary, we will have less quarantining. So Dr. Hausler, talk about what happens if a student is quarantined.
So if we receive confirmation that there's a student who is required to quarantine, and the quarantine is not isolated exclusively to if the exposure happens in school, this is any student that we're notified has to quarantine, whether in-district exposure or out-of-district exposure. Teachers will be maintaining their Google Classrooms for every class and/or course. Students will have access to their classwork either through Google Classroom and/or materials that are compiled by the teacher for the parent to pick up. For example, sometimes it's not exclusively Google Classroom that is able to provide all the resources for students. They may need books, workbooks, worksheets, or other materials in order to be able to accomplish their work. So the teacher will put those materials together, and they will make them available for the student, and the parent will have to come in and pick them up. In addition, students will also be able to access instructional support via a home instruction model that we've used through various circumstances in the school district in the past. Basically, students will be given daily access to synchronous virtual instruction support by certified Monroe-Woodbury staff, in addition to the Google Classroom and/or physical materials that the teacher puts together. At the elementary level, students are able to access 1 hour a day of additional synchronous support, and at the secondary level, it will be 2 hours a day of additional synchronous support. Basically, each school is going to maintain a list of staff that will be able to provide that instructional support to the student based upon the grade level and the department of the various classes that the student is in. That support that's going to be provided for students will be in addition to any weekly extra help sessions that the teachers are typically holding throughout the week that students participate in. That instructional support and extra help that the teacher provides will not only be in person for the schools in class, but we will be making that accessible to students remotely as well. One thing that Mrs. Rodriguez also asked me to speak about is now that there's going to be an emphasis on everybody returning to school in person, what about students who have medical conditions that may impact their education? First thing that has to happen is the parent or guardian needs to reach out to the building principal of the school that the child is in, and they need to notify us as to that medical condition that would impact their education, and they would provide any medical documentation corresponding to the circumstances of the student. We then have established a district-wide team that will review those circumstances, and that review will include not only conversations with the parent, as well as conversations with the staff. It may include consultation with our district physician, and it may involve contact with the student's physician. And then once the review process is completed, the team will then determine any needed accommodations in order to be able to support that student in accessing their education.
Thank you. Dr. Hausler, can you just speak a little bit about, so I gave you an example of this when we were talking about it as a team, and I said, what happens to the student who is taking a singleton class, let's just say an honors class or an AP class, and that student is quarantined? What supports do we have for that student, and how should that student go about accessing that support that we've made available to them?
Sure. Certainly, as I said, the teachers will all be maintaining that extra help session. However, again, as I indicated, we're going to be following that home instruction model where even though the student will have a home instructor that will be assigned to them, and that'll be a staff person from within the school district, the individual teacher of that particular course that the student is taking will also be given the opportunity to be able to provide that live synchronous support to the student. So, for example, if, and again, this model was in place even before COVID and the pandemic. If there was a student who had some sort of surgery, say, and was not able to physically come to school for a period of time, that student was entitled to instructional hours as well as to the materials that the teachers were doing on a daily basis. The person who is assigned to that student to work with the student provides live support, instructional support to that student, but in the event that the home instructor doesn't have the ability to be able to provide the specific support in that content area, that student's teacher would then be given the opportunity to be able to connect with that student, outside the boundaries of the school day to be able to provide that level of support, whether it's, pre-COVID, it might have been in person, but now we have the ability to be able to do some of that work remotely as well. So the specific teacher of the student will also be involved in that process.
And if I'm a student, and I'm a high school student, and I want to access more than what we've provided, what should I do as a student?
So each of the buildings is going to have an individual that is going to be responsible for working with the home instructor as well as the student. And again, I use that term home instructor where it is a staff person of the school district, a certified staff person of the school district, that when that student is found to is required to quarantine, they'll assign a home instructor that's going to be able to hopefully provide the level of support of the student. So if the student is a 9th grade student taking English 9, Global 9, algebra, whatever they may be taking at that grade level, they're going to look at the list of available people to provide support, and obviously they're going to look to provide support at the level of that specific student. But if there are individual needs, will certainly that person who's overseeing that at that building will then make the connection with the additional staff if necessary. At the elementary level, it's a little bit different because, the majority of the students are self-contained students and they have the same teacher all day long. So, the model's going to be a little bit different between elementary and secondary.
Right. I just think that what if none of that is happening? I'm playing devil's advocate here because I think that this is relatively new, and so we're trying to provide an accommodation that we normally don't do, right? So COVID has forced us to create sort of this other home instruction.
Right.
So I'm speaking specifically of high school students because I know that they take what we call singleton courses, so I'm taking one course and it's one teacher. What if a student has someone who's helping them, but they're still struggling? Is there someone else in the building, in the high school or even the middle school, but more so the high school, that they should contact to say, I'm still struggling and I'm going to be quarantined 9 days? Should they call their guidance counselor?
They can certainly speak to their guidance counselor, but again, each of the buildings is going to have one person who's going to be responsible for making that, once they're notified that, again, if it's a ninth grader or a senior or whomever is going to be out on quarantine, the goal would be to pair them up with a home instructor that will be able to provide that support. But in the event that that level of support is not able to be made based upon, if the teacher is an English teacher and the student is looking for help in calculus, we certainly have the ability to be able to connect with one of the calculus teachers to be able to get them involved in that process.
Right,
So,
right. And
How will that
I
be
guess
communicated to the student?
what's that?
How will that be communicated?
So all of this is going to be like firmly ensconced in a plan at each of the buildings that they're going to be connecting with the student when that student is found, is identified to quarantine.
I think we still need to sort of iron that piece out
Sure.
because what happens, what we say here, and then what our children hear, sometimes is not the same.
Correct, I
So
understand.
I think it's going to be really important for our middle school and high school administrators and to share that information, to make sure that once a student is identified as needing to be quarantined, that they understand the logistics. What we don't want to happen is to have a student fall through because we quarantined, last year we quarantined 1,500 students and had no cases of COVID. So, I'm hopeful that this year we'll have less because there's different rules. But I just want us to be clear that what we talk about here really should be communicated clearly to our students and their families so that this plan that we've put together really, really works for our kids.
Understood.
Can I add something also? So I'm just hoping that it's not going to be self-regulated by the student. There's
No.
a person that you are speaking about will oversee to kind of look in on.
Correct. Yep. And that's why it needs to be one individual who's overseeing the list of available staff to provide that support, as well as the students that are coming up for quarantine. So that way, I think the concern is that it becomes sort of this nebulous thing. That's the reason why it really needs to be one individual per building who really oversees that and knows each of the cases individually. But I completely understand. Yep.
And that will be an administrator?
Yeah, in all likelihood, yeah, it'll be an administrator.
I had a question on the masks. Before, when it was talking about properly fitted, they were a little specific about the mask. The recent scientific studies that have looked at masks, the cloth masks have gotten very, very poor
Ratings.
Yeah.
So
is the state going to provide us with criteria for the types of masks that can be worn?
So once we're done with this, we are going to have a document, a living document on our website, and you're going to find in that document, we've put a link into the CDC, and they have a really good visual of what masks they recommend and what masks they don't recommend. And it's written in every language, so anyone can really access it.
So are we going to have a requirement that they meet some specification, or is it not?
I think what we've done in the past is if we see a student that's wearing a mask that's not well-fitted or isn't really conducive to really help mitigate the spread of COVID, usually our school nurse meets with that child or young adult, because it could be a high school student, and then they talk about, how do we fit a better mask? And so that's been done, and we're going to continue that practice. We are going to share that information with our families. We're going to, we have, I believe, Patrick, we have masks in school.
Yes, we do. Yep.
So we have masks that we can give students.
Okay.
But I think it's really going to be important that we have a partnership with our parents, right? This is in partnership with them
course.
to take a look at. So that link is going to be embedded in our plan.
Are we gonna make statements about masks that shouldn't be used?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And just to follow up, the State Ed Department put out guidance, 2 weeks ago or so, a week and a half ago or so, in absence of guidance from New York State, from the governor at the time. The new governor yesterday announced that she would have a COVID, plan out by the end of this week. So I think we're making plans and decisions, and we may get even more information regarding those things that you're bringing up.
Good point, yeah.
Can I just ask a couple things about the quarantine? So, I mean, based on the slideshow that you just showed us, and the fact that we will be masked, it seems as if the quarantine should be minimal. But with that said, what is the plan, and this has been in the community, so these are the 3 questions that I come up with. The cafeterias, because we do know that they are gonna still take down their masks to eat. I noticed that you stated officially that they will not have to wear them outside, so I'm guessing that similar to last year, there were classes, not just athletics, but classes that sometimes went outside. They did English outside for the day, or they took physical education outside for a period. Is it the understanding that then if they are outside and do not have their mask on, they must remain at minimum of 3 feet apart in order to not have to get quarantined?
Correct.
Okay, so are we gonna be consistent to make certain that that's not happening
Yeah,
as well?
essentially, the model that we used last year was when staff took students outside and the students were allowed to take their masks off, that was considered a mask break. So
Right.
the same would be the case, even though
Okay.
they're not requiring masks to be outside. In order to be able to avoid any quarantine issues or things like that in the event of an exposure, we're still gonna have to keep the kids socially distanced.
Okay,
what
so
about the
going
length
back
of
to the
the-
cafeteria piece, what is the plan? I know K through 5, we are able to cohort. How, and I do know that technically the middle school is cohorting because it's by house that they eat lunch, but they're eating at cafeteria tables. So are we putting the plexiglass back up like we've done here
Yep,
this evening?
there's plexiglass. The students are gonna be assigned seats in the cafeteria.
Well, they're not going to be assigned seats.
Correct, yeah, go
Students are
ahead.
going to assign their own seat, and we're going to ask them
We have to
sit
track, right.
in the place they choose. If they choose to move, they can, but we want to know where students are sitting in case anything happens, we know where they are. So it's not an assigned seat, students will sit, and we will create charts as far as that's concerned.
But they're sitting at a cafeteria table. Right.
Right, so they're sitting at a cafeteria table. At the high school, I believe they have enough desks to keep people 3 feet apart, so they don't at this time have plexiglass. They don't need it because
So
they're,
the high school cafeteria in both the large and the small, they are keeping desks.
they are keeping desks because they have desks and they can do it and keep the students
They have
free
enough
from-
desks that everybody can eat
They
in those
do.
2 places? No, I'm saying enough room to keep them 3 feet apart where they
Yes.
are eating in the cafeterias only and they're not eating in other rooms in the building.
The only other building that they are using, I believe, is the weight room, which they only have it for a short period of time. They're going to see, they have
Not
enough seats for everyone.
the wrestling room.
The wrestling room.
Not the weight room.
Sorry, not the weight room,
No.
sorry. I apologize.
Okay.
The wrestling room.
Correct.
And that's being, so, and again, I'm just, like you said, playing devil's advocate, so our students got their schedules the other day. They are assigned a cafeteria. So who's assigned the wrestling room? Because I don't remember hearing that on anybody's schedule.
I don't know that. That may be an overflow
Okay.
room at this time. I think they have it just in case they need space. They may not need it, but I think
Okay.
that they've used that room, and when we spoke this morning as a team, I know Mr. Cassidy spoke about having an overage and having that room, and,
Correct.
we know that Ms. Hawk is going to need that room because.
Right.
we're
And the
going-
possibility that they may have to come up with that's something that's gonna be put into place for September because wrestling season doesn't start until the winter.
Right.
So in the event that spillover space is needed and that has to continue into wrestling season and they need that space, then we're gonna have to find an alternate location somewhere in the building.
So the expectation is, though, that they will be separated enough either by plexiglass at the middle school and/or at the high school in desks so that if they do have their mask off and they're eating lunch, the quarantining should still be minimum.
Minimum, yep.
Correct, okay. And then going to the athletics component.
You're
because we
going
had
ahead
this-
of our
I'm
presentation.
sorry, then I'll wait.
Stacy, can I just ask something with respect to the lunch? So then why would there be an overage? If somebody's assigned to either the large cafeteria or the small cafeteria, what would change to?
Population. The
But, I mean,
population
not
of
that much,
Right,
right?
but I'm just saying, you always want to have, I think the thinking is that you err on the side of, if I need it, there also may be kids who just don't want to go to the cafeteria. I mean, that's a possibility.
yes,
And so
thank you. That's a good
you
point.
have to think about, if I'm a student who doesn't feel comfortable, then you have a third option.
Okay.
So I think that that's the thinking behind what the high school was doing.
But they can still use the library like they always do if they want to, go during lunch?
I would guess so. I mean, I think so.
And I think that they're also continuing to talk about bringing the kids outside for lunch every single
Yeah.
opportunity that they get. So that way, all of those options combined will hopefully give us the opportunity to be able to keep the kids spread
And
out.
there is one building, one school building, which is Central Valley, that will have the students 6 feet apart because they have the space, right? Between the population and the spaces that they have, they will be able to keep the kids during lunch at 6 feet apart.
And partly that's due to furniture because Central Valley is able to use desks and have the desks, if they had to use those desks in the classroom and use tables, they may not necessarily be able to do it, but because they have enough desks to use them in the cafeterias and the space, they can have the kids 6
They
feet
can have,
apart.
so they're at 6 feet apart, so that should be really minimal.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'll let you
Elsie,
finish
the one
before the next
thing I
questions.
also wanted to comment on, because I know, communicating this correctly so that there's not a misunderstanding is, it is not our choice. It's not the school district or the board's ability to choose whether to mandate masks or not. It's going to be with the state. That's coming down from the top, because there's quite a few board members that, from a civil liberties standpoint are against mandates. But we don't have a choice because the state is mandating that this happen, so.
Okay. So I am going to move on
Yes,
to
I'm
the
sorry.
next one, which is your current
see.
question, right? So, and I have the word draft written on that because sports is back. The fall sports season will begin on schedule. Outdoor sports, athletes and spectators will not be required to wear a mask. Indoor sports, athletes and spectators will be required to wear a mask. And guidance to be approved in the near future. So there is discussion at Section 9 athletics. They're going to vote on this. We are waiting. So that's why it says draft guidance. And the hope is that we will be able to play sports. If it's indoors, you wear a mask. If it's outdoors, you do not wear a mask. So the next section is talking about layered prevention strategies, and Mr. Cahill will speak to that.
Right, thank you, Elsie. So layered prevention strategies. So what we're really talking about here is no single strategy is entirely effective. So we intend to employ and combine multiple preventive actions to decrease the risk of infection and the spread of the virus. Students and staff must wear masks at all times while inside school buildings. So we've kind of covered that to a large degree. This is an established preventive measure when the right type of mask is worn and it's worn in the right way, right? And we've talked about that a little bit, over the nose and tight to the face. The spread of the virus decreases. This is a CDC recommendation and now purportedly a New York State requirement and mandate for schools. It's beneficial additionally because, as we mentioned earlier, it should reduce the number of quarantine students. As Superintendent Rodriguez mentioned, those that are wearing masks and within less than or greater than 3 feet, but not necessarily 6 feet. If someone is infected, they wouldn't necessarily be quarantined, or the non-infected student wouldn't necessarily have to be quarantined because of the mask. So it has multiple benefits. Remain socially distant as much as possible. We sort of covered that. That's a basic preventative measure, and when combined with mask wearing, should provide good protection from virus transmission. Hand washing, respiratory etiquette reinforced. So that's something we've been doing since the start of the pandemic. We'll continue to do that. We have signage at all our buildings, around the buildings, talking about washing hands. In terms of the respiratory etiquette, we're going to reinforce with students that they should cover their mouths when they cough or sneeze, They should use tissues and dispose of the tissues when they're done with those. And then, if there is an issue where they coughed into their hand or sneezed, to wash their hands if possible, and when it's not possible, use hand sanitizer. And we're going to have hand sanitizer and the disinfecting wipes in every classroom and throughout the building as well. So ongoing cleaning and disinfecting, so I sort of touched on that to some degree. We're going to continue our protocol with custodial staff cleaning high-touch areas in every building frequently throughout the day as much as possible, including bathrooms, railings, that kind of thing. The nightly cleaning of all the buildings, including disinfecting, will occur. We've talked about cleaning the desks and disinfecting desks at night. That will continue to occur. And I mentioned the hand sanitizer and the wipes, the disinfecting wipes that'll be around the building and in classrooms. Updated air ventilation systems. So this is one that we've gotten a lot of feedback on, because as we learn more about COVID, we realize that it's in the air. That's, to some degree, the way it's transmitted. New filters have been installed in all the buildings. Our custodial staff has gone around and done that. We've checked on all the exhaust fans and air handling systems to make sure everything's functioning properly and functioning up to specifications. We're going to open air dampers. So we have these air dampers on our unit ventilators in classrooms and in the air handling systems. They typically run maybe 10 to 20% open. We did this last year, we're going to continue to do this, open those at 40 to 60%. And when it gets colder, you actually can't do that because the cold air can damage the unit. But we know that introducing outside fresh air is one of the best ways to sort of disperse anything that's in the air, aerosols, and prevent the spread of the virus. One other thing I just wanted to touch on with this, we've gotten feedback about new HVAC systems or air conditioning systems. We've talked about that with a capital program. People have asked about, are we doing anything with the American Rescue Plan Act funding for that? And the reality is, we're going to look at that, but the application for that is actually due at the end of this month. So it's a little premature to ask the question, what did you do over the summer? Because we've gotten some of those questions related to that. The application will go in. It'll be reviewed by the New York State Ed Department. It'll be presumably approved, and then we could start a plan. There'd be plans and specifications. That would be submitted to the New York State Ed Department. There'd be a whole process to actually make HVAC improvements related to COVID and building, the health of the building in general. So use of barriers, we've touched on that a bit. We've invested in a lot of barriers last year. We used those. We're going to continue to use those in the new year. Open windows in classrooms, so that's a real direct and obvious way to introduce fresh air. It's really the easiest way to do that. We're going to continue to encourage that when we can. And we've touched on the use of outdoor space, so that's another tactic, or action that we can take, and we're going to continue to promote that. The one thing I would mention is we had tents. Those were rented tents, and there's almost like a shelf life on those based on the New York State Ed Department. You have like 180 days, and then you have to take them down and reapply. So we'll see if that sort of thing is needed again, but we're certainly going to encourage students to go out into common areas or courtyards and things and utilize those spaces.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to be talking about, if I'm allowed, right? Am I good to go?
Yeah, you can.
Okay, great. I didn't want to just jump ahead without permission. So one thing that we just want to focus on as well, or just remember that what we did last year, we really felt as if it worked because we didn't have cases of transmission. And the goal for this year continues to be to try to reduce the numbers of quarantined students and staff. So I'm going to talk about the buses. Basically, we're going to be doing a lot of the same that we did last year. Passengers and drivers on district transportation need to be masked at all times. The drivers will continue to disinfect the high-touch areas on their buses in between runs, as they did last year, and we'll continue with our regular seating assignments and arrangements. I know that there was a communication that had gone out to some students regarding lockers. We had a conversation today, and students will have the option of utilizing lockers in the district, and there'll be more information to follow about the lockers. Okay?
Thank you. So this document is a living document, and it's going to be updated as we receive updates. Mr. Kravitz spoke about our new governor. She stated that she's going to provide us with more guidance on Friday. So as we get guidance, we will update this document. There's going to be ongoing communication with our health departments. I meet regularly with our Orange County Commissioner of Health multiple times throughout the month. We're going to monitor confirmed COVID cases in the region and within our community, and maintain an open line of communication with local medical professionals to adhere to, of course, the CDC, the AAP, and the local guidelines. Again, I want to focus on that this is a living document that can change, and sometimes we've learned that it can change overnight, and sometimes it is not, on our behalf. It is what the State Department mandates us to do, and so this is what we have planned for our back to school in September. We're going to call it reopening, but we're not, because we have been open, so we're not using that phrase. So with that, do we have any questions?
Elsie, are we going to do anything to offer 12 and older vaccinations? Is there any
At this
coordination?
time, we don't have any coordination, but there has been apparently some funding that came to Orange County, and we're supposed to get some more updates about that, about offering vaccines or how that's going to work. But that came from our BOCES. There was a meeting a week ago, and they talked about funding, but the funding can be used in multiple ways. So it's not just vaccine; it could be, something else. So we're just waiting to hear more guidance regarding that.
Can you touch upon the COVID screening that we had to do last school year?
No more COVID screening.
Hallelujah.
No
And
more temper
temperature
checks. Nope.
Okay, thank you. Okay, those are my questions.
Dr. Koifman had made a comment before he had to leave. One thing that I think is important to communicate is the difference in the Delta variant versus the original COVID. There's a new study, it just got published, I read it the other day. With the original COVID, they do this test where an infected person comes in contact with someone else, and then they come in contact with someone else, and the model involves 10 contacts, right? With the original COVID variant, once it hit 10 people, it infected roughly 9,500 people, right? That was the probability of infection. With the Delta, that same model, it's 60 million people. 60 million versus 9,500. And as I said earlier, I don't like mandates, right? But from a pure science standpoint, and I appreciated the document that was sent to us by the concerned citizens, Americans Frontline Doctors. I went through that document as well, and I didn't go through all of it. It referenced like 27 scientific studies. It was pretty intense, but I got through the first 7, and all 7 of those studies that were referenced in that document that said, don't wear a mask, the first 7 or 5, I think 2 of them weren't downloadable, said a mask is beneficial and you should wear it. And again, I don't like mandates, but from a pure science standpoint, I think we have, in my mind, I separate the 2 out, right? I don't like telling people they have to do it, but frankly, it's just amazing. The infection rate of this new Delta variant is just completely off the charts.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Questions? Okay, we'll move on to committee reports. I just looked up that we have not met for policy, but I do know that we have a meeting coming up on September 21st, and we do have a couple of policies that are coming down that we will be taking a look at. Anything for audit?
Yeah, a couple things. So the field portion of the annual external audit is complete. We had 5 auditors from Nugent Hauser in the district for about 5 days, the entire week. It started on August 2nd, and we have a few loose ends that we need to provide, but we should have the audit report in good shape and ready, for our October meeting. It's typically when we do that. We have that ready for board acceptance. We have a new lead audit partner, so that's can be a good thing, sort of a fresh perspective, a new set of eyes on our processes, and maybe find some areas to improve things. I would say everything went pretty well, very well. I'd like to thank all the staff in the business office. We do this every year, and we'll thank them again, when we actually have the presentation of the audit report. But it's an intense time, leading up to that, and then the week, it's a sort of an invasive process where you're being audited, they're reviewing all your work for the entire year. So it can be stressful as well. I think we're getting better, we're making improvements on that, and I just want to thank them. They rose to the occasion again and did a great job. So that's it for audit.
I think one of the things Patrick mentioned with audit, which is very important for the organization, it's very common to purposely switch audit every so often to make sure you get a clean set of eyes. And we had mentioned to the auditors previously that switching partners, that gives you a different perspective, a different set of eyes. So I think from a compliance standpoint and audit standpoint, this was a very positive move for the organization and the board to know that we have a brand new set of eyes on it, so that it just ends up having better outcome.
Our next scheduled meeting for audit is October 14th. Don, do you want to say anything for facilities? I mean, I know we haven't really met, and I know it says on here our meeting in September is on the 28th, but is there anything that comes up?
The only thing Patrick brought up before is the HVAC stuff, and I think in general, I mean, if anyone's tried to buy a car, they already know this, but trying to get anything, when every school's trying to look at putting in HVAC, even if they come up with a plan, even if it gets approved and everything else, the probability that we're going to be able to purchase any material is slim and none at this point, but it may change. But, putting it in perspective with this stuff on it, I don't see us being able to get anything.
Okay. Dawn, for visitation?
We haven't had a meeting yet. I believe our first meeting is mid-September, where we'll start our rotation for the buildings.
Okay. Very good. I'm going to pass it over to Mr. Kravitz for personnel.
Good evening. Just a couple of things. First of all, you'll notice there are a number of new hires on tonight's agenda, and I just want to say thank you very much for allowing us to add items kind of late in the game. It will enable us as a district to be fully staffed and ready to go next week. Two other things I just want to mention that are highlights. I don't even know if you can count HR items as highlights, but there are substitute pay rates, and I think it's important because our district, like many districts across the land, have struggled to get to secure substitute teachers and substitute nurses. So we are recommending the increase in pay rates for substitute teachers and nurses to be more in line with other districts in the area, so that we can have those positions staffed. And then lastly, there's one retirement today, and it's of Jim Horn. And for those of you who've been in the district long enough, you've seen Jim in some capacity, whether it's in this building. He was on the custodial team at North Main when I first began there feels like years and years ago. But more recently, he's been the head custodian at Sapphire. He did his job really well. He's a proud former Marine. He's a good person, and he will be missed. And with that, I ask for approval for the items listed under personnel.
Make a motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Patrick, for business and financial?
Thanks, Stacy. I'd also respectfully request approval of the items under the business financial section of the agenda, and I'll try to just identify a few highlights, business and finance highlights.
There's a lot. The business always has them.
Right. Well, I'd just like to recognize the donations. So we've gotten 4 donations this board meeting. 3 donations to Smith Clove from Orange and Rockland for STEM classroom grants. So one donation in the amount of $960.58. Another donation from Orange and Rockland, again for STEM classroom grant. That's $836.94. And a $150 donation to Smith Clove from the Blackbaud Giving Fund on behalf of GAP Inc. And there's one donation to the high school, $16 from the Blackbaud Giving Fund on behalf of New York Life Insurance. So we thank everyone for those donations and their generosity. There are a series of contracts for approval, 13 contracts. So it's special ed, tuition, related services, a whole bunch of services bundled in there. There's 4 resolutions for the transfer of surplus monies, and we had talked about that from last year to district reserves. And finally, an affirmation about school meal prices. We hadn't really talked about this a lot, and Mrs. Tauber had brought this out, that next year, it's really good news, we will have free breakfast and lunch for all students, irrespective of their eligibility for free and reduced. So it will all be free again based on a federal program called Seamless Summer Option. And so the affirmation of the meal prices really has to do with that, our participation in that program next year. We also need to, and we said this today at a meeting, emphasize folks should still apply for free and reduced applications, because that information and those applications are used in other ways, sometimes as a measure of need in state aid formulas and things like that. But it's good news for next year. All students will get a free lunch or breakfast if they want it.
Okay,
That's it.
thank you. May I have a motion?
A motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. May I have a motion to approve the recommendations of the Committee on Special Education?
Motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any questions? Aye. Reports by the board and central office. Dawn?
I'd like to thank all the speakers and Elsie and Cabinet and Dr. Pickens for all of your presentations. A special thanks to Dr. Hauster and everybody that helped him with the UPK program. I'm very excited for that, and I know it's going to help a lot of our families in the community. A successful Summer Bridges program, I heard as well. And summer graduation a few weeks ago. Congratulations to the summer graduates. Welcome to our new staff. Looking forward to our start to school, and congratulations to our retiree.
Thank you. Don?
Yeah, I'd like to thank the public. I've seen I think we've all seen on TV, these are very emotional discussions, especially when they affect our children. And I thought the public was excellent tonight. I thought the opinions they expressed were very valid and on both sides. So I was really impressed that it was done in such a professional way. And I think we've all seen others more recently done not quite as well as this. And the one thing that encouraged me the most was, especially on CRT, on the 2 opposing positions, I heard one side saying they didn't want something, and the other side saying they didn't do that. So to me, that's exciting, because if both parties agree on this common thread, it gives us an opportunity to address it and come up with a common solution that it sounds like everybody is in agreement with. That's it for me.
Okay, thank you. Suzanne?
Yeah. I'd like to thank everyone who spoke, and I'd also especially like to thank Dr. Pickens for his presentation. I'm looking forward to the school year, and thank you so much for your sharing your plan with us. I would like to wish everyone a successful school year, and welcome back.
Thank you.
Good night.
Donna?
I want to echo Suzanne and just say welcome back to everyone, all the students and staff who haven't been here all summer. I think it's very exciting, and you're all loved and supported. And of course, it wouldn't be complete if I didn't wish a couple of people happy birthday coming up. Suzanne, Jamel, and even Stacy before our next meeting. Have a great night.
I don't want to acknowledge that one yet, no. Not that bad. Bhargav?
So this summer, we had 3 of our recent graduates come back and help us, along with the 2 incoming juniors at the MCC. And this is really the fun time for us, because it's extremely busy, but also it's an opportunity for us to work with the new folks who have either recently graduated and in the college, or they are in our school. We were able to configure 1,500 new devices, also collect 1,000 devices, and then redistribute them. The goal is to develop this program and in conjunction with working with high school administration to see if we can set up a help desk for the students, run by the students. So we are working with the couple of faculty members, and as of now, we have 2 students. We'll be expanding through the AV and a computer club, that program. And then we're looking to see if we can have more students get this real-time experience working with us, at the same time helping us. As of now, we have about 96% of our students have a district-assigned devices, and we are ready to welcome students and staff next week.
Okay, thank you. Eric?
I too would like to congratulate our summer school graduates and thank you to the entire summer school team for their work and supporting the students and continuing their progress towards graduation. I very much apologize for not being able to attend the ceremony. I absolutely wish that I could have been there. Congratulations to the new staff that were appointed this evening. I had an opportunity to meet many of them this past week with new teacher orientation. So again, congratulations. I look forward to working with you. It's super exciting seeing the fall sports teams back on campus, and it's certainly a sign that we will be back to school next week, so I'm looking forward to welcoming all of our students back. And I want to end with something that I don't think that I've ever done in my years of this job,
Oh, God.
which is
I'm worried.
which is thanking the curriculum office. It's the back to school is a very busy time in the curriculum office in normal circumstances, but with the addition of UPK and all the various other things that are happening, my office team has been working very hard. I left them. I felt bad walking out of the office to come over here for the meeting because they were still there working. Just a shout out to them and the work that they've done in getting everything up and running. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Patrick?
Yeah, I echo what everyone has said and just look forward to welcoming students and staff back and fingers crossed for a normal and amazing new school year. Thanks.
Thank you. Matt?
This morning, I had one of my favorite meetings that I always have during at the start of the year, and I got to meet all of our future student teachers. So those who are going to be coming in and learning from our teachers, it's just a constant reminder of our job as educators is to continuously give back to the next generation of teachers. We've put a lot, I feel very confident that we've put a lot of new people or who will be in front of our kids who are good people. So I'm excited to see them grow. And other than that, welcome back. We'll see everybody, gosh, in just a couple of days. It's going to be awesome. Thanks.
Thank you. Dan?
Hope everybody enjoys their last few days of summer. It's all coming to an end. Other than that, have a great night.
Thank you. Anthony?
Ditto. Enjoy your last few days of freedom if you can. And good luck in the upcoming new year, and have a good evening.
Thank you. Michael?
I want to thank all the stakeholders who participated tonight. I thought it was a respectful exchange of ideas and opinions. I also want to thank Elsie and the Cabinet for all your hard work on getting us ready for the reopening, and I want to welcome the new staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I want to take a moment to thank our administrative team. Normally, the summer is a time to take a break, get away, rejuvenate, and come back for September. That didn't happen this year, and I want to thank them because they not only managed all the programs that we had and did it very, very well, but also spent a lot of time preparing for our back to school. So thank you. I too want to thank my office, Donna and Lisa, because they've been going nonstop, and I couldn't do the job that I do without my administrators, my staff, my teachers, but it's Donna, Lisa, and Carol who really helped me do what I do, so thank you. I do want to thank the speakers. I think it was an art that we have lost in this country, the ability to stand and disagree and be respectful, and I hope that this is a sign of what things can come, that we can disagree and walk away, and when we disagree, it means that we don't like each other, it means that we have different opinions, and that's the beauty about living in this country. So I was really, really appreciative of the fact that everybody got up and spoke what they felt, and I'm incredibly proud of our community because I have watched all the other board meetings, and this was very graceful, and I thank the community members. I also want to thank Dr. Pickens because his work with us is instrumental, as always, in making sure that our kids and our staff members feel that this is a safe environment, because it's the only place to grow. And lastly, I am super excited about bringing everybody back to school. And this year is really special because we're going to be welcoming 3- and 4-year-olds at our Sapphire building. So it's going to be a great year. We're going to make it as traditional as possible. If wearing a mask is something that we have to do, we'll do that gracefully, but we're going to have an awesome year, and I'm really excited about it. So thank you.
Thank you. I too want to thank the speakers. As many of the other board members and Mrs. Rodriguez mentioned, you know, it is a little nerve-wracking that we do have a policy that allows for the public comment, but we do feel that it is important to allow for that. And I also want to thank the community for getting up and being respectful, and it's difficult. I know that everybody has their opinion, but I do value the opinion, and I think the entire board does, so we appreciate that you were able to get up here tonight and speak and not have us end up on News 12 as some of the other boards have, so I am definitely appreciative of that. I want to thank the presentation from Dr. Pickens. I look forward to the work that he'll do the rest of this year with our students, and I look forward to the updates that I know Dr. Hassler will have on the equity teams and what has been happening within those committees, so I think that's great. I want to take the opportunity to thank the high school again for hosting us. I know that it is a lot of work to set everything up and have us here, but we are appreciative. I want to thank the high school yearbook committee, because I know typically on a non-COVID environment, the students are here, they present us every year with our yearbook, and unfortunately this year, because of the delay in the yearbooks, we got them last week without so much circumstance, but I do want to say thank you to the committee. I was able to look at the book. It was phenomenal, even given the circumstances of a COVID environment. I thought they did a really, really great job, and I just want to say thank you to the advisors and to the students who worked on that book. It is definitely appreciated. I want to welcome back our athletes who started this week. I think it's great to see them out on the field. I don't know how they do it, because it, of course, has been excruciatingly hot, but I want to welcome them back and wish them all a great season. I want to thank everybody for the summer school graduation. It was great to be in attendance of that. Thank you to Mr. Peterson, who had us for the extended school year program. It was wonderful to see those students as well. I want to wish Mr. Horn a great retirement. I've known and been with him at Sapphire as a PTA member, and he's phenomenal. So I want to wish him the best in his retirement. And I want to say welcome back next week. I know I've said this countless times up here as a board member. It is my favorite part about doing what I do, is being able to have the luxury of going to the schools and seeing the students. So I can't wait till Wednesday when we get to see, especially the elementary schools. I have 2 in the high school this year, and I know they don't want to see me. But I will be waving at all of the elementary school kids, even though they have no idea who I am. It makes me smile. So I will be there. I wish all the staff, the faculty, and all of the students a great first day of school, and to the parents that are excited to have them back in school. So thank you very much. And with that, I ask for a motion to adjourn.
A motion?
A second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, meeting adjourned.